Hey everybody, this is that German guy Josh Runquist, and it is my distinct honor to be here with one of my many heroes in all of metal, Tom G. Warrior, who just got done doing an amazing show at Maryland Deathfest with his band Triptykon. How are you doing?
Doing very well. It's good to be back in the United States finally.
Oh, very much so. Just like right before I hit record, I was saying this was my first time being able to see you guys, and it's your first time back in the States in quite a while.
hmm Yeah, unfortunately, it's become a little more difficult to go to the States as a European band. Yeah, American tours have always been the absolute high point of every album release ever since I first came to North America in 1985. But due to the changes in the world, of course, the hurdles have become much bigger to get visas and everything for bands, and the bureaucracy has become very difficult. The interviews that you have to go to are humiliating. I'm a 52-year-old human being, and it really makes you think where the world is headed if this is the future. And it's become very difficult for a band to come here. And when you finally are here, you have to yield most of your income to American artist taxes and stuff. It's a shame because, as I said, it used to be number one, a given thing to come over here with every album. Number two, it used to be at the absolute high point. It was the dream of every European band to go to the States to tour. There was nothing better. And the fans and the cities are still the same. It's become a bureaucratic nightmare, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad to see that too. I mean, especially with yesterday, Sodom having to drop off of Maryland Deathfest.
Yeah, and I heard that some other bands also had some problems at least. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
It really is.
I have no idea what's behind it. I think maybe there's also a bit of protectionism, because of course then it favors American bands over bands from other countries. But that's just some suspicion I have. I don't know. But of course, at the end of the day, who's suffering is the fans, which is very unfair. And of course, when an American band comes to Europe, of course they also have to do some paperwork, but nowhere near to the extent that we have to do. And that's the way it should be, you know.
I wish it would go back to that. Maybe it will at some point.
Well, there's so many forces in nowadays world that make the world a more negative place that I can't see this changing. I do understand that the reasons the government employs all these things. You know, the country is under threat. I understand all that. I'm not naive. You know.
But with all that said, though, I'm glad that you guys were able to make it out here to the States and do such a great show yesterday.
Same here. Absolutely, it was overdue. It's been a very long time since we've been here, and the last year, due to the death of a very close friend of mine, we couldn't attend the festival. So I'm very, very glad we finally broke that spell, and then we were on stage.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I was going to make it out last year, and that would have been my first Maryland Deathfest experience.
Me too.
Yeah, but for other reasons as well, I wasn't able to make it out, and I was really hoping that you guys were going to be making it back to the States in some capacity, whether it be a full tour or support slot or anything like Maryland Deathfest. So when I seen this come up, it's like I knew I had to make it out here.
Well, it was a given that if we would get the offer by the festival to make this up, it was a given that we would say yes. There was no consideration given to turning this down. And we were disappointed, and we knew a lot of people were disappointed last year. So.
Oh, but it's under the circumstances. I mean, it's completely understandable.
There was just simply no way I could leave Giger's widow and his closest friends at the time, and that I probably would have been extremely unfocused on stage too. It was a shock when he died. What can I say?
Oh,
I mean, I was at the house like 1.5 hours after it happened. At that moment, it seemed like science fiction to travel just a few days later to the States and play on stage like nothing happened.
Yeah. But, I mean, luckily a year's gone by, and just, again, the set from last night was just, like, perfect for me. I mean, it was just, like, so nice and heavy all the way through.
Well, we tried to balance it. We always try to be approximately half of Triptykon and half some of the older stuff. And just about.
So, are the older Celtic Frost and Hellhammer songs still fun for you to play as much as
Very
the
much
new
so.
Triptykon?
I have enough albums that I have the liberty to select the songs that I like to play. I don't have to play anything I don't like. There's plenty of material that I could play otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
No. I don't want to go on stage and force myself to do something.
Mm-hmm.
No. I love these songs. Certain songs have quite some personal meaning for me. They were created through certain periods in my life that are still significant for me. No, of course I'm going to play these songs. I'm actually loosely working on a project to for the first time bring Hellhammer songs to the stage.
Oh, really?
I mean, occasionally we're playing Hellhammer songs with Triptykon, but I don't want Triptykon to be a Hellhammer cover band.
Mm-hmm.
And Hellhammer cannot and should not be reformed because it's Hellhammer was a product of its time.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly don't want to reform it for money.
Mm-hmm.
But most of these songs have never been played live, and some of the Hellhammer songs, in spite of also difficult things attached to them, but some of the Hellhammer songs mean a lot to me, very important for my own path. And I would love to play those, so I'm working on a little project to hopefully bring them on stage this year as authentic as possible.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm assuming that would be just Europe for now?
I'm basically open for anything.
Oh, sweet.
But it depends. I mean, there again, I mean, I've had insane offers by certain festivals to reform Hellhammer. And I always felt that would be a huge betrayal because Hellhammer was exactly not about that. So I just want to play these songs. I don't care where it's at. I mean, there's probably going to be some big festivals who if the project actually matures, who want to hire us. But I can also see that in a tiny little club because that's where Hellhammer belongs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. It's basically open.
Oh, very cool. I mean, if that ever comes to the States, I don't care how far I have to travel. I would love to see that. Mm-hmm. And of course, a part of Triptykon. Part of this appearance is in support of your latest album, Melana Chasmata, which came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Easily one of my favorite albums of last year, and if I do say so myself, one of your finest works.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I mean, you can just by listening to it, you can tell how dark the album is, and I know there were some dark times going on there as well. What went into the writing process with the new album?
That's a very, very complex question that would take hours to answer. Well, the only thing I can say is the album was created during a very difficult time in my life, and even that sounds cliche.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid, but it's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a human being like everybody else, and I don't have a secret recipe to a perfect life. And as it happens, a number of things took place at the same time, or roughly the same time, and there was a point when it was just a bit too much. And it plunged me into a pit of darkness and difficulty and depression, from which I found it very difficult to escape again. And it came to a point where we had to let the album rest for like over a year. The band didn't convene and we didn't work on the album. It was half finished, and we didn't know whether we would ever finish it. Eventually, with the help of somebody very close to me, I mustered some form of strength, and that also included the reconvening of the band, which gave me additional strength because those are some of my closer friends.
Mm-hmm.
And we set ourselves a deadline and finished the album, but it remains a very difficult album for me to listen to. It's there's some stuff that I'm very happy about, like the song Aurora, for example, but there's stuff on the album that's just too close, and I have a very critical stance towards the album because of that. It's just a personal thing. I feel very fortunate that it's become so successful. It's a difficult album, what can I say? At least it's authentic.
Oh, yes. And right around the time, August 2013, I started having some of those dark times myself, and it wasn't until the last few months that things finally started getting better in my own life. And when Melana Chasmata came out, it's like it hit me so close, even though obviously different situations, but like I can feel like the darkness and the pain that went into there, and it really helped me out just listening to it.
I believe you, partially for the fact that you're not the first person to have told me that. I think the situation I went through has been shared by a lot of people, and certain parts of it could obviously be identified by other people who have experienced something like that. I've had many such discussions with people since the album came out, and well, at least there's another positive aspect to the album, I guess.
Yeah, it's a strange situation sometimes. It takes like very dark emotions in music to make you feel like you're not alone, and it's like a shared experience that way.
Yeah, but that's pretty much how I felt too in the 1970s. I as you probably know by now, I had a very difficult youth, and certain early music by Black Sabbath and stuff just drew me in totally, because in the mood, the aura, some of the lyrics, I could totally recognize myself, and I felt like I was understood. I was completely helpless at the time. There wasn't even internet or anything like that, and the music was like a sanctuary where I felt I belonged, and I felt it shared my emotions. So it's basically always been the same for me too.
Oh, I mean, that's just the great thing about the music. I mean, with it just being such a shared experience, I mean, it can help bring you through the day.
It transcends everything. It transcends borders and bureaucracy and languages and everything.
Just out of curiosity, what are the songs on the new album that are hard for you to listen to?
Oh, there's quite a number. Black Snow, which to me was probably the most important project on the album. I'm extremely dissatisfied with it. We used to play it after we released the album. We used to play it live, but we've taken it out because I find it unfinished. We had to finish the album at some point, because dragging it on, we just, there was just a point where we felt we need to set a deadline and finish the album, because otherwise it's going to be an endless process, and we're dragging something negative with us forever. Which is good that we did that, and otherwise the album would have never been finished. But having said that, certain songs to me personally sound unfinished. There's a lot of unreleased material that should have gone on the album that's languishing in the studio. Yeah, there's a number of things that I'm not very happy with, which I hate even more, because I'm a perfectionist in the studio. Realistically, I know it's overall it's a strong album. It's mainly on a personal level. Certain songs are attached to personal feelings that I'm gladly leaving behind. And, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's another thing too with like writing an album that dark. Is like it almost purges your body, so then you continue on afterwards.
Well, there's so many bands who project an image. For various reasons. They want to look more manly, or they want to be part of the black metal scene, or whatever. There's just millions of reasons. Maybe that's also legitimate. Each to their own. Everybody can do whatever they want. But I tend to think that the music we're playing is very authentic. And yes, the album is a difficult album, but at least it's an honest album. And I think that's below the line, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's as true for the listener as it is the person creating the album. It's got to be real and authentic.
Absolutely.
If it sounds fake, anyone will be able to notice that.
I don't know if they do, but because there's a lot of fake music out there.
Well, there is.
Not just in our scene, I'm not trying to badmouth our scene. It's by and large also on TV and everything. There's so much fake shit out there. But music, especially to me, was always connected to real emotions. Like we said just before, when I was a teenager and struggling, and music reflected. When I listened to Black Sabbath or UFO when they were still aggressive and stuff, all these 70s bands, they reflected the fire and the screaming that was inside of me. And I guess it was the same for every generation. So to me, those two things don't fit together at all, fakeness and music. It's incompatible.
It is for me too. I mean, that's why I always gravitate towards metal and hard rock for that reason alone. But even in there is some fake music going on as well.
Unfortunately, a lot of the bands that were very violent in the 70s discovered that money could be made if they would play for housewives. And so it happened, and it was hugely shocking for me to see many of my favorite bands from my youth descend to top 10 bands and create music that was just shambles.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing when a band catches on, because usually the album that breaks through is not the one that changes the band. It's the album after, when they get that little taste of success, and then they completely change their sound.
I often wondered what went through the mind of some of those bands when when they created such heavy music, game-changing music, and then later they played their little little anthems that are just pathetic commercialism. And didn't they remember their old guitar riffs? What went on in their minds? Were they like whatever, we want to make money and fuck all our own fans? But what's going on in their minds?
The only thing I can think of is like the label saying, yeah, we can put out this album for you, but if you need to write more songs like this.
I've heard that apology made many times already in interviews, but I don't buy that.
Yeah.
I'm by no means a superstar. My bands have achieved some kind of cult status, but there's bands even in our relatively small scene that are far bigger, and yet I have full control over my destiny. I control everything that Triptykon and at the end Celtic Frost does. So you cannot tell me that a band like Aerosmith or whatever, Black Sabbath, and many also contemporary bands who have released such albums, you cannot tell me that they, okay, the record company told us that, okay, we better do it, otherwise they beat us up.
Yeah.
Come on. It's just an easy excuse while they're counting the money.
Yeah. You do raise a very valid point.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I mean, little Tom Warrior from Switzerland controls everything. What the fuck?
And that's one of the reasons why I admire you so much, is like you've never lost your integrity. You've always created the music.
No, that's not fair to say. No, I don't deserve that. No, I've had a period where I completely lost the plot and released at least one album, in my opinion, it's two, that are unspeakably terrible. And that's just a fact. And I've never been a coward, I've never shied away to acknowledge the responsibility. No, I'm a human being like everybody else. I've never claimed I'm perfect. Sometimes fans bestow that title on me, but I don't deserve that. No, what I can say is that I've learned a huge amount from that album. I've become a far more self-critical musician. I've become a far more detailed and professional producer. I've learned my instrument better afterwards. I've learned the mechanisms of the whole process of creating an album much better after that. That album shocked me so much. The depth to which it plunged. It was a wake-up call, and I was like, that's never going to happen to me again. I've never want to lose the plot again. I'd rather dissolve a band if I feel that I've lost the plot than release an album, put the name on it that it doesn't deserve, because then it puts me in the same category as the bands that we just talked about. Maybe for a different reason, but I'm still there. It doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day, does it?
No.
So no, you can't tell that. You can't say that about me. In all fairness, I'm very flattered about all the positive criticisms I receive, but the truth is, it's been a long and very winding path.
Well, I guess you did put it in a better way than I could have as well. I mean, that shows, I think, even greater depth, is where even if you feel that you've created something that you can't be proud of, that you can learn from that. Absolutely. And not make those mistakes again.
What you're going to do if whatever aspect in life you fail miserably, what can you do to make it positive? The only thing you can still do to give it a positive spin is to analyze it and honestly analyze it without any reservations, to find out why you did that, why did this happen, and what was wrong with me? How can I avoid this in the future? How can I become a better whatever human being, musician, whatever it is? And of course, it's easier for me now to talk about that. It's 27 years ago. It was much more difficult when it was my latest album. I realized it was a piece of shit. Then you have to live with it. It represents you. Now, it's an album way in the past, and I have many other albums that speak for themselves. So it's become a little easier to talk about it. But there was a time when I had to stand and say, yeah, it's my latest album. It's shit.
That does happen sometimes in people's careers, but
there are
there are some musicians who do put out those kind of albums and they will never own up to it.
Which to me is very cowardice. I don't think Triptykon would have been possible in this shape and form if I wouldn't have made that process of maturity, if I wouldn't have self-analyzed myself and I was quite merciless to myself. Cold Lake has received an immense amount of criticism, but I think none was more humiliating than what I was thinking about myself. It puzzles me how I could have released an album like that. And in the back of my mind, there's always this process is always in the back of my mind when I create an album nowadays. I've vowed to myself that that's never going to happen again, that I've never lose the plot, that I never relinquish control. All these things that led to the album. That I'm focused on many other things. And hence Triptykon and Triptykon's level or manner of procedure in the studio.
So with that said about Cold Lake, I know there is the fan base out there who do love the album.
Yeah, no, the world is riddled with insane people.
That's touche.
There was 2008, 20 years after the album came out, English magazine Zero Tolerance wrote a new review about the album.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about that. I received the magazine. I was like, what the hell? And they they put an interesting spin on it. They were like, it's almost a prog rock album because it was experimental, this and that. And it was written so convincingly that I almost bought into it. For 5 minutes I thought, maybe it is a good album. But then I was like waking up thinking, no, it's bullshit. It's a legitimate opinion. Everybody can have their opinion. But no, it just doesn't work. No, it's not a good album. Sorry. It was very nice. A nice attempt. And I would have loved it. I would have been the first one to love if it would actually have been true. But no. Sorry.
Well, just hitting back in Triptykon, you said that there was a lot of leftover material from the latest album. Would any of that see the light of day?
No, there's always a reason why stuff gets left over. But there's one song that I think is fairly Triptykon-esque and fairly good. That was the bonus track in Japan, because the Japanese label always demands one song more, even though we thought the album was perfectly paced. But Japan has this tradition; they always want a track more, so we put that song on there. And I really regret that it wasn't. I mean, of course, it's everywhere nowadays, but it's not officially released in the West. And in some shape or form, I would like to see that released. Maybe we'll do a remix of it or so, put it on the next album. I think it's a fairly good song. It's written by our guitar player, me together, which already makes it a little more unusual than the rest. So, yeah.
Oh, that's definitely one thing I can say about the line above Triptykon. It's solid. Completely solid from the bass, drum, guitars, and vocals, of course. It's just like a completely solid lineup that you have.
Yeah, I'm very glad about that. As I proudly remarked to Martin Ain several times since the breakup of Celtic Frost, Triptykon's lineup has been more stable for it than Celtic Frost lineup ever. Triptykon has been a stable lineup for many, many more years than the longest Celtic Frost lineup. So there's also a certain vindication in this for me. There were certain parties in Celtic Frost who blamed me for the breakup of the band, and as is apparent with Triptykon, it is obviously possible to work with me for years and remain closest of friends, which we are. We are almost like a family in Triptykon. Mm-hmm. So I tend to think the people who said that should maybe look in the mirror. You know, there's only two left.
That's right.
Anyway.
Yes. As far as Triptykon goes, is there anything on the horizon, or is there any European shows coming up? Any possible touring in the future?
Yeah, we're playing a number of festivals in Europe. We're looking at some touring options. But I think if a full headline tour, we'll do that next year. I think we need to do for a new album first, which we are working on.
Oh, cool.
We'll see. I'm taking it fairly easy with touring nowadays.
Sure.
I've done all of this for 33 years. I don't feel like when I was a testosterone-fueled guy in my early 20s, when I needed to prove myself like every year with a new album and tour, this and that. I've done all of this, and I'm creating music now purely for my enjoyment. And so I take the liberty to shoot down a lot of proposals that just don't seem right to me. I want Triptykon to be seen in the right context, and to the frustration of our concert agent, I've been shooting down a lot of things, and I've accepting only things that seem right. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping sometime in the future that will include a headlining tour in the States again. I remember the first and I believe only Triptykon tour in the States.
So far, yeah.
Yeah,
Which
came.
Was fantastic.
Yeah, that came to St. Paul, Minnesota. I live right on the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I was not able to make that show.
I'm very glad you say that, because that was probably the most difficult show of the whole tour.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it because of the heat?
No, that it was just a very strange vibe that night. Us and the audience, we just never could get it running for some reason, and we all went away from that show thinking, what the hell just happened? The tour was fantastic. You always have your ups and downs, of course, especially when you tour an entire continent. But St. Paul was very difficult. I don't know what happened.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the venue, because even it could be in the heart of December or in the middle of July, it always feels extremely hot in that venue, and it does like take a lot of the energy away.
But I mean, I've had
some
some of my best shows I've had in Texas in the summer. It can't be that.
Well,
I mean, for all I know, maybe it was us. I mean, I don't, I'm not trying to imply anything. We really don't know what happened. The tour was fantastic, and by and large, we had fantastic audience and we had good shows. But maybe the audience had a bad day and we had a bad day, and if you mix the two, then it just doesn't take off. I've had fantastic shows in the Minneapolis area, of course, with Celtic Frost and stuff. I don't know what happened that day.
Well, yeah, I was just about to say, I hope that doesn't put like a disdain for Minnesota, because I would love to not have to travel 16 hours again just for Maryland.
No.
Oh, cool.
No, I've played First Avenue a couple of times and so on, and other venues, and it was always very good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, First Avenue is a great venue.
Yeah, I always think of Prince when I'm on stage.
Yeah, I guess he just sold it a couple of years ago, because he did own First Avenue for a long time, and then he sold it off a couple of years ago.
The parts of Purple Rain were filmed there, it was very strange to be, basically a successor band to Hellhammer and be on that stage.
Although it's kind of sad though, because they don't have as many rock or metal shows there anymore. I mean, they maybe have 1 or 2 a year now, when they used to have a lot of them there.
Yeah, maybe that reflects the state of affairs.
I was also thinking it might have been when Prince sold it. That's when they stopped having the hard rock and metal shows.
I don't know how much of an underground metal fan he is.
Well, I just got to say thank you so very much for doing this interview. It's been a huge honor of mine.
It's a pleasure.
I've been a fan of yours ever since I picked up is it Monotheist or Monotheist?
Monotheist.
Monotheist, okay. Yes, I'm from Wisconsin. I have terrible with pronunciations, but I've been a fan ever since that album. That was my first exposure to you, and I've been a fan ever since, and this has been one of my biggest honors, is to be able to sit down with you and have a great conversation like this.
It's all my pleasure. It was fantastic to play Maryland Deathfest, and it's not something I take for granted as a kid from a little farm town in Switzerland to be interviewed in the United States. So thank you.
Oh, not a problem. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up that I have not mentioned yet?
Oh, there's like a million things. No, but just thank you to the audience too for making our show at the Maryland Deathfest so fantastic.
Well, I'm glad I got to be in that audience, and I'm glad I can hopefully give you some more exposure as well. And what I'm hoping for is you guys coming back to the States even bigger and better than ever.
Well, if you get a good offer, we'll do it, definitely.
Awesome. Once again, that was one of my biggest heroes, Tom G. Warrior of Triptykon. Make sure to check out Melana Chasmata, and be on the lookout for anything related to Triptykon and anything that will happen with the Hellhammer tribute that should be coming up in the horizon. This is That German Guy, Josh Runquist. Thank you.